I signed my name on the buyout agreement and watched my husband's face light up with barely concealed triumph. You made the right choice, Emma, David said, his hand on my shoulder in what anyone else would call a supportive gesture. I knew better. I'd seen this exact moment before. In another life, I'd refused to sign. In that life, I'd lost everything anyway. But this time, I had something they didn't. The memory of the next 5 years burned into my mind like a scar that wouldn't heal. The conference room fell silent as I set down the pen. David's brother Marcus, our company's COO, actually exhaled in relief. My former best friend Jennifer, our CFO, tried to hide her smile behind her tablet. The three of them had been so careful, so patient in wearing me down over the past 6 months. Anonymous complaints to the board about my erratic behavior. Whispered concerns about my emotional instability after my father's death. Strategic exclusions from key meetings, death by 1,000 cuts, all designed to make me take this buyout and disappear. $45 million for my 60% stake in Artemis Technologies, I said, my voice steady. That's what you think is fair? Emma, we've been over this. Jennifer leaned forward, her expression practiced sympathy. In another life, I'd believed that sympathy was real. I'd cried on her shoulder about how overwhelmed I felt, how the pressure was destroying me. I hadn't known she was sleeping with my husband. I hadn't known she was the one orchestrating my downfall. The company is valued at $75 million. Your shares are worth exactly what we're offering. We're actually being generous given the market conditions. Market conditions. That was rich. In my previous life, I'd held on to my shares through everything they'd thrown at me. They'd eventually forced me out through a hostile board vote they'd secretly orchestrated, stripped me of my CEO position, and diluted my shares into oblivion through a series of strategic funding rounds that somehow I was never properly notified about. I'd ended up with nothing, absolutely nothing, while watching Artemis Technologies IPO 18 months later at a valuation that made all three of them billionaires. But I knew something they didn't. The IPO wouldn't happen in 18 months. It would happen in 13 months, right after they finalized the acquisition of a small AI startup called Prometheus Systems. That acquisition would transform Artemis from a promising enterprise software company into the backbone of the next generation of autonomous systems. The IPO would value the company at $75 billion, 1,000 times what they were valuing it at today, 1,000 times what they were paying me. You're right, I said, gathering my things. I'm tired of fighting. $45 million is more than enough for me to start fresh. The relief in the room was palpable. They thought they'd won. They thought the brilliant but difficult female CEO was finally out of their way, leaving them free to run her company into the stratosphere without having to share the glory or the credit. David reached for my hand as I stood. Em, I know this has been hard, but it's for the best. You've been so stressed, and after your dad, I pulled my hand away. In my first life, I'd let him comfort me. I'd sobbed into his chest about how much I missed my father, how lost I felt without him. I'd been so vulnerable, so broken, and he'd used every moment of that vulnerability against me. Don't, I said, my voice cold. I'm just saying, you need rest. Maybe travel for a while. Take some time to figure out what you want. You've earned it. His eyes were warm, concerned. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the truth, I might have believed it. This has been your whole life for 10 years. Maybe it's time to discover who you are outside of work. I'll do that, I said. In fact, I already have my next move planned. Marcus frowned, his hand pausing halfway to his coffee cup. Next move? I'm not retiring, Marcus. I'm 42 years old and I just sold a company I built from nothing. Did you really think I'd just stop? We have a non-compete clause, Jennifer said quickly, her eyes darting to the contract on the table. Her fingers were already pulling up the relevant section on her tablet. You can't start a competing enterprise software company for 3 years. It's ironclad. Our lawyers made sure of it. I'm aware. I read the contract, Jennifer. Unlike the last board meeting minutes, which somehow never made it to my inbox. I smiled at her, watching the color drain slightly from her face. But I have no intention of competing with Artemis. That ship has sailed. Then what? Marcus started. Good luck with everything. I'm sure you'll do great things. I picked up my copy of the contract, folded it precisely, and slipped it into my bag. I genuinely hope Artemis exceeds all your expectations. I walked out of the conference room, out of the building that still had my name on the founding plaque in the lobby, and didn't look back. Security had already deactivated my badge. They'd been that confident I would sign. I had to be escorted out by the same guard who'd watched me stumble in at 3 a.m. countless times over the years to fix server issues or prepare for investor meetings. "Sorry to see you go, Ms. Chen," he said as we reached the door. "This place won't be the same without you." "Thank you, Miguel. Take care of yourself." The Bay Area sunshine hit me like a revelation. It was February, unseasonably warm, and I stood on the sidewalk outside my former company feeling lighter than I had in years. In my previous life, this moment had destroyed me. This time, it felt like liberation. I pulled out my phone and made the first call. The money hit my account within a week. $45 million minus taxes and legal fees, 31 millions, in actual liquid capital. In my previous life, the number had seemed impossible. A fortune beyond measure. I'd put most of it in conservative investments and watched it grow slowly while I tried and failed to find my next venture, paralyzed by the trauma of what had happened. This time, I knew it was seed money for something far greater. I made my first call from my home office, the one David hadn't been inside in months. He'd moved into the guest room 6 weeks ago, claiming my mood swings were affecting his sleep. In my previous life, I'd believed him. I'd gone to therapy, started taking anti-anxiety medication, convinced myself that I was the problem. This time, I'd found the text between him and Jennifer within a day of his move. Their affair had started 3 years ago, right around the time the three of them had begun their campaign to push me out. The messages were disgusting in their intimacy and their casual dismissal of me. "She'll never know," Jennifer had written. "She's too wrapped up in her own head." "She's losing it anyway," David had replied. "Marcus and I are already working on the transition plan. 6 months, tops, and she'll be gone. Then we can be together properly." I'd screenshot everything and stored it in an encrypted cloud drive. Insurance, though I doubted I'd need it. The best revenge wouldn't require exposing their affair. It would require making them irrelevant. "Ms. Chen?" The voice on the other end was young, eager, touched with a Nigerian accent that reminded me of summer rain. "This is really you?" "It's really me, Dr. Okafor. I wanted to talk to you about Prometheus systems." There was a pause. I could hear the sounds of a laboratory in the background, the hum of servers, the beep of equipment. "How do you know about Prometheus? We're not public yet. We haven't even filed our patents. We've been operating in complete stealth mode." "I know because I make it my business to know where the next big thing is coming from. And you're it, Dr. Okafor. Your algorithm for autonomous decision-making in AI systems is going to change everything." Another pause, longer this time. "Ms. Chen, I don't understand. We haven't published anything. We haven't presented at any conferences. The only people who know the details of our work are my team and our current investors." "Let me guess. Your current investors are getting cold feet. They committed to a Series A round 6 months ago but keep delaying the wire transfer. They're asking for more data, more proof of concept, more validation. Meanwhile, you're 3 months from running out of runway, and you've had to cut your team from 12 people to 5. The silence on the other end told me everything. "How?" she started. "Because I've seen this pattern 1,000 times. Brilliant woman, revolutionary technology, investors who can't quite pull the trigger because they don't trust that you know what you're doing. Am I wrong?" "No," she said quietly. "You're exactly right." Chimamanda Okafor had been a PhD student at MIT when she developed the core algorithm that would revolutionize autonomous decision-making in AI systems. Her innovation wasn't in the AI itself. It was in how AI systems could coordinate with each other in real time, sharing learning and adapting to novel situations in ways that current systems couldn't even attempt. In my previous life, Artemis had acquired Prometheus for $12 million 13 months from now. Chimamanda had been so desperate for funding to continue her research that she'd accepted the first serious offer, signing away her life's work for what amounted to pocket change. David, Marcus, and Jennifer had immediately buried her algorithm in Artemis's development pipeline, credited themselves with its refinement, and used it as the cornerstone of their IPO story. Chimamanda had ended up as a mid-level engineer at Artemis, watching other people get rich and famous from her innovation. This time, that wouldn't happen. I'm prepared to invest $20 million in Prometheus Systems, I said, for 40% equity and a board seat. I heard her sharp intake of breath. 20 million? Ms. Chen, our current valuation is 5 million. That would value us at 50 million. That's insane. Is it? Or is it the first rational valuation of technology that's going to be worth billions? I need to think about this. I need to talk to my team, to our current investors. Your current investors don't believe in you, Dr. Okafor. If they did, you'd have their money by now. And your team will follow your lead because they trust you and they know you're trying to save the company. So the real question is, do you believe in yourself enough to accept an investment from someone who actually understands what you've built? Why? Her voice was almost a whisper. Why would you invest so much in a company you've never even visited, in technology you haven't even seen? Because I've spent 10 years in this industry watching brilliant people get overlooked, underfunded, and underestimated. I'm done watching. I want to be part of building something that matters, with people who actually deserve the success. Can we meet? In person? I can be at your lab tomorrow. 2 p.m. work for you? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Ms. Chen, thank you. Thank you for even considering this. Don't thank me yet. If your technology is as good as I think it is, I'm the one who should be thanking you for letting me invest. We met in person the next day at a nondescript building in Sunnyvale. Prometheus Systems operated out of a former dental office with servers humming in what had once been examination rooms and Chimamanda's desk squeezed into the converted reception area. The whole operation screamed, "Startup on life support." But the technology was breathtaking. Chimamanda walked me through a demonstration using a network of autonomous drones in current systems. Each drone operated independently, following pre-programmed instructions and making isolated decisions. Her system allowed them to function as a collective intelligence, sharing what they learned in real time and adapting their behavior based on the group's overall objectives. The applications are endless, she said, her eyes bright with passion as the drones moved in perfect synchronization on her screen. Search and rescue operations where drones can coordinate to cover maximum area and adapt to changing weather conditions. Warehouse automation where robots can reorganize workflow on the fly based on demand. Medical diagnostics where AI systems can share insights across hospitals to identify emerging disease patterns. Traffic management, power grid optimization, climate modeling, any complex system that requires coordination and adaptation. I watched the demonstration and remembered how, in my previous life, Artemis had used this exact technology as the foundation for a platform that had been adopted by everyone from the Department of Defense to Amazon to Tesla. Chimamanda's innovation had generated hundreds of billions in value. She'd never seen a penny beyond her acquisition payout and her engineer's salary. "It's perfect," I said. "Even better than I expected." "Really?" She looked almost startled, as if she wasn't used to unqualified praise. "Really? Dr. Okafor, I want to make you an offer right now, and I want you to really hear what I'm saying. $20 million for 40% equity. You retain full control of the company and the technology. You're CEO, you make all the strategic decisions. I'm just an investor and advisor. But I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't sell this company for at least 2 years. Build it right. Protect your patents. Grow at a sustainable pace. And when the acquisition offers start coming, and they will come, I want right of first refusal. Can you agree to that?" She studied my face for a long moment. "You really believe in this?" "I really believe in you." Chimamanda Okafor signed the term sheet that afternoon, and I wired the $20 million the next day. That was the first domino. The second was a struggling cloud infrastructure company called Titan Networks. Their CEO, a brilliant systems architect named Robert Zhou, had developed a revolutionary approach to distributed computing that reduced latency by orders of magnitude while cutting infrastructure costs dramatically. But Titan had been too early to market. Cloud computing was still relatively new, and most companies weren't ready to adopt the kind of radical architecture changes Robert was proposing. In my previous life, Titan had gone bankrupt in 8 months. Their technology had been bought at auction by Amazon for $18 million dollars and had become the foundation for the next generation of AWS services, eventually generating hundreds of billions in revenue. Robert had ended up as a mid-level engineer at AWS, bitter and broken, watching his life's work make other people rich. I called him on a Wednesday afternoon. Mr. Zhou, my name is Emma Chen. I just sold Artemis Technologies and I'm looking for my next investment. I'd like to buy Titan Networks. The laughter on the other end was harsh, almost desperate. Ms. Chen, I appreciate the interest, but Titan isn't for sale. We're going to turn this around. Robert, can I call you Robert? I've seen your quarterly numbers. I know you're 3 months from insolvency. I know your investors are refusing to put in more money and your creditors are circling. I'm offering you a way out. And what? I just hand over my company to you? Let you strip it for parts? No, I buy the company for $18 million, but you stay on as CEO with full operational control. I give you another $15 million in operating capital. You get 5% equity in the new entity with a path to grow that to 20% based on performance milestones. You keep building the technology your way, and when we sell or go public, you actually get to benefit from your own work. Silence. Why would you do that? He finally asked. Because your technology is brilliant and you deserve better than what's happening to you right now. Because I'm tired of watching great companies die because they ran out of runway right before they could prove their value. And because I think in 2 years, your architecture is going to be industry standard and I want to own the company that invented it. You're serious. I'm wiring you proof of funds right now. You'll see $18 million in an escrow account in the next 10 minutes. If you accept my offer, it's yours by end of week. Robert Zhou signed the deal 4 days later. I now owned Titan Networks and had spent 33 of my $31 million. But I wasn't worried. I still had bank credit, liquidatable assets from my previous portfolio, and complete confidence in what was coming. The third company didn't exist yet. I had to wait for it. In my previous life, a major data breach had occurred at Wells Fargo on March 22nd. 40 million customer records exposed, billions in market cap wiped out, and a congressional investigation that had lasted 4 months. The breach had been traced back to a vulnerability that existing security protocols had missed because they were designed to detect known attack patterns. This attack had used a novel approach, one that current systems couldn't identify. A former NSA analyst named Sarah Kim had left her government job 6 weeks after the breach to start a company addressing exactly this problem. Her insight was that security systems needed to identify anomalous behavior rather than matching against known threats. Essentially, they needed to understand what normal looked like and flag anything that deviated, regardless of whether it matched a known attack signature. In my previous life, Sarah had struggled to get funding. Investors didn't take the threat seriously enough, quickly enough. By the time they did, she'd burned through her savings and had been forced to sell her company to Cisco for $40 million. A decent exit, but nowhere near what the technology was actually worth. Cisco had used her system to build a platform that had become the gold standard for enterprise security, generating tens of billions in revenue. I couldn't approach Sarah before the Wells Fargo breach because it would seem too much like insider knowledge. But I could prepare. I spent March networking in the cybersecurity space, attending conferences, writing think pieces about the future of threat detection, building a public profile as someone who understood the industry. When the Wells Fargo breach happened exactly when I knew it would, I was ready. I reached out to Sarah Kim 3 days after the breach made headlines. I don't know you, she said when we met for coffee in Georgetown, near the NSA facility where she still worked. She was younger than I'd expected, 31, intense, with the kind of focused intelligence that made you feel like she was seeing through you to something more essential. No, but you're about to leave the NSA to start a security company, probably in the next 6 weeks. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. That's a very specific prediction. I know people who know you. I've heard you've been frustrated with government bureaucracy, that you have ideas about how to fundamentally reimagine threat detection but can't implement them within the existing structure. And I know that after a breach like Wells Fargo, you're looking at what happened and thinking, I could have prevented that. A lot of people could have prevented that. No, a lot of people could have prevented that specific attack after the fact now that we know what happened. You're one of the few people who could have prevented it before it happened because you understand that the whole paradigm of signature-based threat detection is fundamentally flawed. She took a sip of her coffee. Keep talking. Current security systems are like police who only arrest criminals they've seen before. They're looking for known threats, known patterns, known bad actors. But the sophisticated attacks, the ones that actually matter, are novel. They're things we haven't seen before. We need systems that understand what normal behavior looks like and can identify deviations before those deviations become catastrophic breaches. Anomaly detection isn't new. No, but making it actually work at scale is. Most anomaly detection systems have terrible signal-to-noise ratios. They flag so many false positives that security teams ignore them, which defeats the entire purpose. You figured out how to solve that problem. You figured out how to build a system that understands context, that can distinguish between a user working from a new location because they're traveling and a user working from a new location because their credentials have been compromised. Sarah set down her coffee cup. How do you know about my research? I don't know about your specific research, but I know how you think based on papers you published 5 years ago and talks you've given at security conferences. And I know that someone with your background and insights is exactly who we need building the next generation of security infrastructure. We? I'm offering you $12 million in seed funding for 35% equity. You build the company however you want. You keep control. I'm just the capital partner who makes sure you don't have to choose between pursuing your vision and paying your rent. $12 million for a company that doesn't exist yet, working on technology you haven't seen, in a market that hasn't proven it wants this approach. Yes. Why? I leaned back in my chair and decided to give her the truth, or at least a version of it. Because I've spent the last 10 years watching brilliant people, mostly women, get overlooked, underfunded, and undervalued in tech. I just sold my company and I have capital to deploy. I could put it in index funds and earn 7% a year. Or I could use it to back people like you who are actually going to change things. The returns will be better and the impact will matter more. You haven't asked me about my team, my business plan, my go-to-market strategy. Because those things are solvable problems. Finding someone who actually understands what the next paradigm shift looks like, that's not solvable. That's lightning in a bottle. And I think you're it. Sarah Kim studied me for a long moment. I need to think about this. Take your time. But Sarah, don't wait too long. The world just got a very public demonstration of why we need what you're building. Right now, you have momentum. 6 months from now, people will have moved on to the next news cycle, and it'll be harder to make them care. She signed the term sheet 2 weeks later, right after she submitted her resignation to the NSA. I was now into bank credit for my investments, having committed $55 million against my $45 million buyout. But I wasn't worried. These 3 companies alone would be worth billions within 2 years. I spent the rest of the spring making smaller investments, carefully deploying capital based on my knowledge of what was coming. A machine learning infrastructure company that would be acquired by Google for $800 million. A biotech firm working on mRNA vaccine delivery that would be worth $5 billion after the COVID pandemic. A fintech startup that would revolutionize payment processing and IPO at a $12 billion valuation. Each investment required me to find the founders before they'd achieve the success I knew was coming, to convince them I understood their vision when the rest of the market didn't. It was exhausting work, but I was operating with an unfair advantage. I knew the future. By May, I deployed my entire buyout amount plus another $15 million in bank credit across 9 strategic investments. I kept $5 million in liquid assets for living expenses and legal fees for what I knew was coming. Because David filed for divorce on May 15th, exactly when I knew he would. We met in the living room of the house we'd bought together 8 years ago. The same house where we'd hosted dinner parties and celebrated holidays and planned our future. The same house that, in my previous life, I'd been forced to sell at a loss to pay legal fees when the divorce turned ugly. "I'm sorry, Em," he said, his voice heavy with manufactured regret. His hands were folded in his lap, his expression perfectly calibrated to convey reluctant sadness. "I just don't think we want the same things anymore. You've changed." "I've changed," I repeated flatly. "How interesting. Tell me, David, in what ways have I changed?" He shifted uncomfortably. In my first life, I'd been too devastated to question him, too broken to fight. This time, I watched him squirm. "You've become distant, closed off. Ever since your father died, you've been different. And then selling Artemis, I felt like you made that decision without really including me, without considering how it would affect our life together. Our life together. The life where you've been sleeping in the guest room for 2 months? That's what I mean. You're angry all the time, Emma. You're impossible to talk to. I've tried to be supportive, but you push me away." "Is this about Jennifer?" The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might actually pass out. "What about Jennifer? Are you going to pretend you're not sleeping with her? Really? We're going to do that?" His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Emma, where is this coming from?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd compiled. "I have 214 messages between you and Jennifer discussing your affair. I have hotel receipts. I have credit card statements showing charges at restaurants I've never been to, on nights you told me you were working late. I have calendar entries that don't match what you told me you were doing. Should I continue?" "You've been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention. There's a difference. Now, let me ask you something. Are you filing for divorce because you want to be with Jennifer, or because Marcus told you it would be cleaner if we weren't married when Artemis goes public?" His jaw tightened. Point scored. "I don't know what you think you know about Artemis. I know you're planning to acquire Prometheus Systems. I know you're planning an IPO in approximately 8 months. I know you think you're about to be worth $1 billion and you don't want to split that with me. We have a prenup, Emma. You wouldn't get any of my Artemis shares anyway." "True. The prenup we signed when Artemis was worth nothing and I was the only one with equity. Very convenient for you, but David, here's the thing. I don't want your Artemis shares. I don't want anything from you at all." He looked almost confused, as if this script wasn't going how he'd rehearsed it. "Then why are we even having this conversation?" "Because I want you to know that I know. I want you to understand that I see exactly who you are and what you did. You, Marcus, and Jennifer spent 2 years systematically undermining me, gaslighting me, making me think I was unstable so you could push me out of my own company. You stole my work, and you tried to steal my sanity. The affair was just the cherry on top. Emma, you're being paranoid. Am I? Do you want me to pull up the emails where you and Marcus discussed the timeline for transitioning me out? The messages where you told Jennifer that I was losing it and it would be easy to convince the board I was unfit? The planning documents for how to structure the buyout to minimize what you'd have to pay me?" His face had gone from pale to flushed. "You can't prove any of that." "I can prove all of it. I've had lawyers review everything. We could make this very ugly for you, David. Corporate espionage, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud. But I won't." "Why not?" "Because I don't need to. File your divorce papers. Take the house. I don't want anything from you except out." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Just like that?" "Just like that." "What are you going to do?" I smiled, and I saw him actually flinch. "I'm going to watch you realize exactly how badly you miscalculated. All three of you." The divorce was finalized in September. David got the house, the cars, the wine collection we'd built together. I got my freedom and walked away clean. His lawyers seemed shocked that I'd asked for nothing. Mine thought I was insane. Neither group understood that I'd already won. In October, Artemis Technologies formally approached Prometheus Systems with an acquisition offer. Chimamanda called me, laughing so hard she could barely speak. They offered $12 million, she gasped. $12 million for technology they say will transform their platform and position them for market leadership. And they want full ownership, all IP, complete control. What did you tell them? I told them I needed to consult with my investors and I'd get back to them within 2 weeks. Emma, they have no idea you own 40% of us, do they? None whatsoever. This is the most satisfying thing that's ever happened to me. Oh, it gets better. Trust me. Chimamanda followed the plan perfectly. She dragged out negotiations, asking for time to refine the technology. And when I consider her options, Artemis got increasingly frustrated and increasingly desperate. They could see what Prometheus represented. They knew it was the missing piece of their IPO story, and they couldn't understand why this small, struggling startup wouldn't jump at their offer. The offers kept coming. 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. We rejected them all. Emma, they're up to 75 million now, Chimamanda said in January. We were 10 months past my buyout. That's more than the entire valuation of Artemis when you sold your shares. Is the technology ready? The patents are filed, the platform is stable. We have 3 Fortune 500 pilots running, all successful. Then tell them you're not selling. Tell them you're seeking strategic partnerships instead. And if they want access to Prometheus technology, they can license it like everyone else. They're going to lose their minds. I know. David called me that night for the first time since the divorce. Did you do this on purpose? He demanded without preamble. Did I do what on purpose? Invest in Prometheus, block our acquisition, sabotage our IPO. I was in my new apartment, a penthouse in San Francisco with views of the bay. I'd bought it with cash, one of my few personal indulgences. David, I invested in a promising technology company founded by a brilliant woman who deserved funding. That's not sabotage. That's business. You knew we wanted to acquire them. How could I have known that? I made my investment in February, 8 months before you made your first offer. Are you suggesting I somehow predicted your acquisition strategy? You're destroying us, Emma. I'm not destroying anything. I'm an investor protecting my investment. If you want access to Prometheus technology, make a partnership proposal like everyone else. We built our entire IPO narrative around having proprietary AI coordination technology. Without Prometheus, we have nothing that differentiates us from a dozen other enterprise software companies. Then I guess you should have thought of that before you pushed me out of Artemis, or before you built your entire strategy around technology you didn't own and couldn't guarantee you'd acquire. What do you want? What's your price? There is no price, David. Prometheus isn't for sale to you, not at any number. Emma, please. No, you made your choices. You live with them. I hung up. In February, exactly 1 year after my buyout, Artemis Technologies announced they were delaying their IPO indefinitely to focus on organic technology development. Their stock price, they'd done a private placement at a $300 million valuation to fund operations, dropped 40%. That same month, Titan Networks announced a revolutionary breakthrough in distributed computing architecture that reduced latency by 70% while cutting infrastructure costs by half. The announcement came with partnership agreements from 3 cloud providers who wanted to rebuild their infrastructure using Robert's technology. Microsoft called me directly. Ms. Chen, we'd like to acquire Titan Networks. We're prepared to offer $1.2 billion. I'd bought the company for $18 million. I owned 85% of it. This sale would net me just over $1 billion. Let me talk to Robert, I said. It's his decision as much as mine. Robert, Joe, and I met the next day. He looked different than he had a year ago. Less stressed, healthier, more confident. Actually, sleeping at night probably helped. You made me a promise when you bought Titan, he said. You said I'd actually get to benefit from my own work. I did. Under the terms of our agreement, you own 5% of the company with escalators based on performance milestones. You've hit every milestone. Your equity is now at 15%. If we sell to Microsoft for $1.2 billion, you walk away with $180 million. He was quiet for a moment. That's life-changing money. It is. But it's not just about the money, is it? It's about whether I want to keep building or whether I want to exit. What do you want, Robert? I want to know what you think. You've been right about everything else. I think Microsoft is going to use your technology to dominate the next generation of cloud infrastructure. I think you could stay independent, grow the company, and potentially IPO in 2 years at a $5 billion valuation. But that's risky. Microsoft is a sure thing. The question is whether you want certain wealth now or the possibility of greater wealth later. What are you going to do? I'm voting to accept the offer. $1 billion return on an $18 million investment in less than a year is extraordinary. And I have other companies in my portfolio that will give me the growth I'm looking for. Robert nodded slowly. Then I vote to accept too. Let's sell. The Microsoft acquisition closed in April. I netted $1.02 billion. Combined with my other investments, I was now worth approximately $1.5 billion. From a starting point of $45 million in less than 14 months. David reached out through his lawyer. He wanted to meet. I agreed, curious what he could possibly have to say. We met in the same conference room where I'd signed the buyout agreement. He'd arranged it deliberately, I was sure, some kind of power play. But the symbolism worked differently than he'd intended. He looked diminished in this space, older and smaller, while I felt like I was visiting my own memorial. You won, he said without preamble. He looked tired, hollowed out. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago, and his expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost. I did. How did you do it? How did you know? I considered telling him the truth, that I'd lived this life before, that I'd watched them destroy me once and had used my rebirth to destroy them instead. But what would be the point? He wouldn't believe me, and even if he did, it wouldn't change anything. I did my research, I said instead. I paid attention to emerging technologies and brilliant people who needed support. I made smart investments, that's all. That's not all. His voice was sharp, almost desperate. You knew about Prometheus before we did. You knew which companies to invest in, which technologies would matter, exactly when to buy and sell. It's like you could see the future. Maybe I'm just better at this than you wanted to believe. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I loved you, Emma. I did, in the beginning. I know, but you loved the idea of success more. And when you had to choose between me and what you thought was your path to success, you chose the path. You all did. Artemis was supposed to change everything. We were supposed to IPO at $75 billion. Marcus and I were supposed to be billionaires. Jennifer, he stopped. Jennifer was supposed to be your wife. I know. How's that working out? His jaw tightened. We broke up. 3 months ago, she blamed me for the failed IPO, said I'd promised her things I couldn't deliver. Turned out she was more interested in my future net worth than in me. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sympathy, nothing. I'm sorry it didn't work out. No, you're not. You're right, I'm not. What do you want, David? Why did you ask me here? I want to know what happens now with Artemis, with us. There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time. As for Artemis, I paused, considering. What's the current situation? The board is talking about selling the company. Our revenue is flat. Our growth projections keep getting revised down, and we're bleeding engineering talent to competitors. Without the Prometheus acquisition, we don't have a compelling IPO story. We're just another enterprise software company in a crowded market. What are the offers? Oracle bid 300 million, IBM bid 250. Both are basically buying us for the customer base and the talent, not the technology. That's unfortunate. Emma, please, is there anything? Can you help us? Can you invest in Artemis? Save it somehow? I stared at him. Are you seriously asking me to save the company you pushed me out of? I know how it sounds, but you're good at this. Better than any of us ever gave you credit for. And Artemis was your baby. Don't you want to save it? Artemis stopped being my baby the day you made me sign that buyout agreement. You wanted it without me? You have it without me. Sell to whoever offers the most and move on with your life. What about you? What are you going to do? I'm going to keep building. I have 9 companies in my portfolio, David. 4 of them are about to IPO or get acquired at valuations that will make Artemis look like a rounding error. I'm going to be worth $10 billion by this time next year, and Artemis won't even be a footnote in my story. His face crumpled. For a moment, I saw real anguish there, real understanding of what he'd lost. I'm sorry, Emma, for all of it. You deserved better. Yes, I did, but I don't need your apology. I needed you to be a better person 18 months ago. Now I just need you out of my way. I left him there, in the conference room where this had all started, and walked back into my life. In June, Athena Security announced they'd won a major contract with the Department of Defense. Sarah Kim's threat detection algorithms had identified and prevented 7 potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, including one that could have taken down the power grid in the Pacific Northwest. Overnight, every major corporation and government agency in the world wanted her technology. Her company's valuation went from $70 million to $2.4 billion in a single funding round. In July, my mRNA vaccine delivery company, Helix Bio, announced breakthrough results in their phase 2 trials. Their platform could deliver genetic payloads with unprecedented precision, opening up treatment possibilities for everything from cancer to genetic disorders. Their valuation hit $8 billion. In August, 3 more of my portfolio companies announced either acquisitions or major funding rounds at valuations that made my initial investments look prescient. The press started calling me the Golden Touch. Forbes ran a profile. Emma Chen, the billionaire who sees the future. The article was both flattering and frustrating. They attributed my success to intuition, genius, and uncanny luck. They didn't understand that it wasn't luck. It was knowledge, hard-won and paid for with the pain of my first life. In September, 18 months after I'd signed the buyout agreement, Artemis Technologies announced they were being acquired by Oracle for $420 million. David, Marcus, and Jennifer would each make a few million from their equity stakes, enough to be comfortable. Nowhere near what they'd dreamed of. The company that was supposed to be worth $75 billion was sold for less than 1% of that valuation. I was worth $3.2 billion. Marcus reached out asking to meet. I almost said no, but curiosity won. We met at the same coffee shop where I'd met with him a year earlier. He looked worse than David had. Grayer, thinner, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from prolonged stress and failure. You destroyed us, he said without preamble. I destroyed nothing. You destroyed yourselves. By pushing you out. By underestimating me. By thinking that the company was about the idea rather than the execution. By believing that you could steal credit for my work and somehow make it yours. We were wrong. Yes. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. It's worth nothing, Marcus. Sorry doesn't give me back the 2 years you spent undermining me, gaslighting me, making me think I was the problem. Sorry is just what you say when you lose. What now? What happens to you? I keep building. I have 12 companies now, Marcus. 6 are on track to IPO within the next year at combined valuations over $50 billion. 3 more are in acquisition talks. I'm launching a venture fund focused on women-led technology companies. And I'm doing it all without having to deal with people who don't respect me. And you're happy? The question surprised me. Yes, for the first time in years, I'm actually happy. Not because I won, though that doesn't hurt, but because I'm free. Free of you, free of David, free of Jennifer, free of all the people who tried to make me small. He nodded slowly. I hope it's everything you wanted. It's better. Prometheus Systems went public in October at a valuation of $18 billion. My 40% stake was worth $7.2 billion. Athena Security went public in December at a valuation of $9 billion. My 35% was worth $3.15 billion. By the end of my second year post-buyout, I was worth $14 billion. My portfolio companies had a combined valuation exceeding $80 billion, from a starting point of $45 million, a 300-to-1 return in 2 years. Jennifer called me on New Year's Eve. She was drunk. I could hear it in her voice. Emma? Is this Emma? It's me. I need to tell you something. I need to say, her voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry for what we did to you. Are you? We didn't know. We didn't know that you could. We thought we were smarter than you. We thought we deserved Artemis more than you did. Why? What? Why did you think you deserved it more? I built the company. I had the vision. I did the work. What made you think you deserved the credit? She was quiet for a long moment. Because you made it look easy. Because you never complained about how hard it was, never asked for credit, never made a big deal about your contributions. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that meant the contributions weren't that valuable. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. I loved him, David. I really did. But he didn't love me. He just wanted someone who made him feel like the important one. And I was so stupid. Jennifer, I don't care about your relationship with David. That's between you two. What I care about is that you helped him and Marcus destroy my reputation and push me out of my own company. You smiled to my face while you stabbed me in the back. You were my best friend, and you betrayed me in the worst possible way. I know, and I hate myself for it. Emma, is there anything? Can I do anything to make this right? No. Please, No, there's nothing you can do. You made your choices. You live with them. And I move forward without you. I hung up. In year 3, my portfolio exploded. Helix Bio was acquired by Pfizer for $23 billion. My investment of $8 million turned into $4 billion. My fintech company IPO'd at a valuation of $14 billion. My $12 million investment became $2 billion. 2 of my machine learning infrastructure companies were acquired by Google and Facebook for a combined $16 billion. My stakes netted another $2 billion. I was worth $24 billion. I started Athena Ventures with $5 billion in committed capital. My thesis was simple: invest in brilliant women building transformative companies. The tech industry had spent decades overlooking, underfunding, and undervaluing women founders. I was going to change that. Our first fund deployed capital to 27 companies in its first year. 18 months later, 12 of them had either been acquired or had achieved unicorn status. The portfolio was worth $11 billion. I was on the cover of Time magazine, The Woman Who Won Silicon Valley. The article traced my journey from Artemis to my current empire. It mentioned the buyout, but positioned it as a strategic exit rather than a betrayal. It didn't name David, Marcus, or Jennifer. They weren't important enough to the story. In year 4, I got a call from the board chair at MIT. Ms. Chen, we'd like to talk to you about endowing a chair in computer science. Specifically, we'd like to create the Emma Chen Professorship in Artificial Intelligence. I thought about all the brilliant women I'd met who'd struggled to get funding, to get recognition, to be taken seriously. I thought about Chimamanda and Sarah and all the others who'd needed someone to believe in them. I'll endow the chair on one condition, I said. The first professor to hold it must be a woman, and MIT must commit to actively recruiting and supporting women in computer science and electrical engineering. We can agree to that. I wrote a check for $50 million. A month later, they announced that Dr. Chimamanda Okafor would be the first Emma Chen Professor of Artificial Intelligence. She would split her time between teaching and continuing to lead Prometheus systems, which she'd taken private again after our IPO to focus on long-term research rather than quarterly earnings. She called me crying. Emma, I can't believe this is too much. It's not enough. You changed the world, Chimamanda. The least the world can do is give you the resources and recognition to keep doing it. In year 5, I was worth $32 billion. I'd invested in over 200 companies. 63 had achieved successful exits. 22 had IPO'd. The combined value created by my portfolio exceeded $200 billion. I'd created over 100,000 jobs. I'd enabled breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, biotechnology, clean energy, and a dozen other fields. And I'd done it all starting from the ashes of betrayal. David sent me a letter. Actual paper, actual handwriting, delivered by actual mail. Emma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to reach out, but I saw your speech at the Tech Women's Summit last month. Someone sent me a link, and I had to write. You said something that's been haunting me. The people who tried to make me smaller didn't make me weaker. They made me realize I didn't need them to be great. You were talking about all of us, weren't you? Me, Marcus, Jennifer, everyone who underestimated you. I want you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Not just our marriage, though that too, but the partnership with someone extraordinary. The chance to build something meaningful with someone who actually had the vision and courage to do it right. We were so focused on getting credit, on being the ones in charge, on claiming ownership of success that we couldn't see we were destroying the source of that success. You were always the engine, the vision, the reason Artemis mattered. We convinced ourselves we could replace you with process and strategy and execution. We were wrong. I'm working as a consultant now, it's fine. I make good money helping mediocre companies become slightly less mediocre. It's nothing like what we could have built together. Marcus is at a mid-tier software company. He's a VP of something or other. He hates it, but needs the money. Jennifer left tech entirely. Last I heard, she was working in nonprofit management. She sends me an email every few months, always the same message. Do you think Emma would ever forgive us? I tell her the truth. No, you won't forgive us, and you shouldn't. Forgiveness implies that what we did was somehow excusable, that it was a mistake rather than a deliberate campaign to take what was yours. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that I see clearly now what I couldn't see then. You didn't just beat us at business. You proved that character matters more than tactics, that vision matters more than politics, and that the people who bet on themselves will always beat the people who bet against others. I'm glad you won, Emma. I'm glad you became everything you were meant to be. And I'm sorry it took losing you for me to understand what I had. David. I read the letter 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, vindication, anything. But all I felt was empty. Not empty in a bad way. Empty like a room that's been cleared out to make space for something new. He was right. I wouldn't forgive them, but I also didn't need to carry anger toward them anymore. They'd served their purpose in my story. They'd tried to destroy me and had instead freed me to become something greater. I put the letter in a drawer and never looked at it again. In year 6, I was invited to speak at my college's graduation ceremony. I almost declined. Public speaking still wasn't my favorite, but then I thought about the young women in that audience who might need to hear what I had to say. I accepted. The day of the speech was perfect. Clear skies, warm sun, thousands of graduates in their caps and gowns ready to change the world. I stood at the podium and looked out at all those hopeful faces. 10 years ago, I sold a company I'd founded for $45 million. Everyone told me I should be thrilled, that I'd won, that I'd beaten the odds as a woman in tech and could now relax and enjoy my success. But I knew the truth. I'd been forced out by people I trusted. People who thought they could do better without me. People who believed that my vision was expendable and my contributions were replaceable. I could have fought to stay. I could have sued, burned bridges, made the betrayal public. Instead, I took the money and I built something new. That decision changed my life. Here's what I need you to understand. Sometimes walking away is winning. Sometimes the thing you're fighting to save isn't worth saving. Sometimes the people who don't value you are doing you a favor by letting you go. I took my $45 million and I invested it in 9 companies. I chose brilliant people who'd been overlooked and underestimated. I chose revolutionary technologies that the market hadn't recognized yet. I chose to build instead of dwell on betrayal. Those 9 companies are now worth over $100 billion combined. My personal net worth is over $30 billion. I've invested in over 200 companies founded by women. I've helped create over 100,000 jobs. I've enabled breakthroughs that are changing the world. The company that forced me out, it was sold for less than 1% of its projected value. The people who pushed me out made a few million each, comfortable but nowhere near what they dreamed of. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this because you need to know. When someone tries to make you smaller, when they try to dim your light, when they try to convince you that you're the problem, they're wrong. But here's the hard part. You can't control what they do to you. You can only control what you do next. I could have spent the last 10 years angry. I could have spent them trying to prove I'd been wronged, fighting for recognition from people who'd already shown me they didn't respect me. Instead, I spent them building. You're going to face betrayal in your lives. Some of you already have. You're going to work with people who take credit for your ideas. You're going to have partners who undermine you. You're going to encounter systems designed to keep you small. When that happens, you have 2 choices. Fight to stay in a place that doesn't want you or build something better somewhere else. I chose to build. Know your worth, believe in your vision, and when someone shows you they don't value either, thank them for making it clear and go build your empire somewhere else. Because the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming so successful that they become irrelevant to your story. So, thank you. Applause was thunderous. I saw tears, nodding heads, young women holding hands and whispering to each other. I'd said what they needed to hear. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was clutching her diploma, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Ms. Chen, I'm Priya Sharma. I just finished my PhD in quantum computing. Congratulations, Priya. What's next? I have a job offer from Google. It's good money, good benefits, a clear career path. But I also have an idea for a startup. Everyone thinks I should take the safe route. What do you think? I think my idea could change everything. But I'm scared. I looked at this brilliant young woman standing at the exact crossroads I'd stood at decades ago. Priya, can I tell you a secret? She nodded. I've failed more times than I can count. Most of my investments don't work out. Most of my ideas don't pan out. But the ones that do, they change the world. You know why I'm successful? Not because I never fail, but because I learned to bet on myself even when no one else would. But what if I fail? Then you learn and try again. But what if you don't try at all? Then you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I want to try. Then try. And when you need funding, call me. I handed her my card. I invest in brilliant women with revolutionary ideas. Quantum computing sounds revolutionary to me. She stared at the card like I'd handed her a winning lottery ticket. Really? Really, but Priya, don't call me until you've tried everything else first. Bootstrap as far as you can, prove your concept, show me you can execute, and then, when you're ready to scale, we'll talk. I will. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Thank you so much. I watched her walk away, her head high, her steps confident. She would build something amazing. I was sure of it. That night, alone in my office, I reflected on the journey. 10 years since the buyout. 2 lifetimes of experience. Chimamanda called. Emma, the Nobel Committee just announced this year's winners. I'm on the list for physics. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Chimamanda, that's incredible. They cited my work on coordinated AI systems and its applications to everything from climate modeling to medical diagnostics. Emma, none of this would have happened without you. If I'd sold to Artemis, my algorithm would have disappeared into their code base, and I'd be just another engineer collecting a paycheck. You did the work. I just wrote a check. You did more than that. You believed in me when no one else would. You protected me from making the biggest mistake of my life. You taught me that sometimes the best decision is to walk away from a bad deal and wait for the right one. After we hung up, I pulled out the buyout agreement from 10 years ago. I'd kept it, a reminder of where this journey had started. $45 million for 60% of Artemis Technologies. The company they'd valued at $75 million had been sold for $420 million, still nowhere near the $75 billion they'd projected. Meanwhile, my $45 million had become $35 billion, a 777-to-1 return. But more than that, freedom, purpose, and the satisfaction of building something that mattered on my own terms. My phone buzzed. An email from Sarah Kim. Emma, I wanted you to be the first to know. Athena Security is being acquired by the U.S. government as part of the new Cybersecurity Infrastructure Initiative. They're valuing us at $42 billion. Your stake is worth $14 billion. But here's the thing. They want me to stay on and run it as a quasi-independent agency. It's basically my dream job. All the resources I need, complete autonomy, and a mission that actually matters. And it's only happening because you gave me the freedom to say no to acquisition offers until the right one came along. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for teaching me that the best deals are the ones you walk away from until you find the one you can't refuse. Sarah, I smiled and closed my laptop. 10 years after the buyout, I was worth over $45 billion. I'd invested in over 300 companies. 112 had achieved successful exits. 47 had IPO'd. The combined value created by my portfolio exceeded $500 billion, but the numbers didn't matter as much as the people. The women I'd funded who'd gone on to change their fields, the technologies I'd supported that were making the world better, the proof that betting on brilliant, underestimated people was not just the right thing to do, it was also the most profitable. I thought about my first life, the one where I'd fought to stay at Artemis, the one where I'd let them grind me down slowly, where I'd lost everything and ended up broken and bitter. That Emma had died of a heart attack at 47, alone and defeated. This Emma was 52 and worth $45 billion. I had an empire. I had a legacy. I had proven that they hadn't won by pushing me out. They'd lost their only chance to be part of something truly extraordinary. The final message came on the anniversary of the buyout, exactly 10 years to the day. It was from Marcus. Emma, I know you probably delete my messages without reading them. But on the off chance you see this, I wanted to tell you something. I'm teaching now. Business ethics at a small college in Oregon. It's not glamorous, and the pay is terrible, but I get to warn the next generation about all the mistakes I made. I use Artemis as a case study. The company that destroyed itself by destroying its founder. The students always ask the same question. Why would anyone be stupid enough to push out the person who made the company successful? I tell them the truth. Because we were arrogant. Because we confused being in the room with being the reason for success. Because we thought we could replicate genius with hard work and political maneuvering. We couldn't. You were the magic ingredient, Emma. Not just your technical vision, though that was extraordinary, but your courage to take risks, your ability to see what others couldn't, your refusal to accept limitations. We destroyed that. And in doing so, we destroyed ourselves. I tell my students that the greatest business mistake isn't making a bad investment or missing a market opportunity. It's underestimating the people who make success possible. I underestimated you. We all did. And we're paying for it with the knowledge that we could have been part of something world-changing, but we chose petty politics instead. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just telling you that I finally understand. You didn't just win, Emma. You proved that integrity and vision will always beat politics and betrayal. Thank you for that lesson, even though it cost me everything. Marcus. I read the message once and then archived it. They understood now, finally. But their understanding didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd taken the worst betrayal of my life and transformed it into the foundation for something extraordinary. What mattered was that hundreds of women had companies and careers because I'd funded them when no one else would. What mattered was that the world was better because I'd refused to let betrayal make me bitter. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked onto my balcony. The city glittered below me, full of possibility and potential. Somewhere out there were brilliant people with revolutionary ideas, struggling to get funding, fighting to be taken seriously. Tomorrow, I'd meet with 5 of them. Next week, 10 more. My empire would grow, my legacy would expand, and every company I built, every woman I funded, every success I enabled would be a monument to the simple truth that had taken me 2 lifetimes to fully understand. They hadn't beaten me by pushing me out. They'd freed me to become something far greater than they could ever imagine. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.